And if there's a lot of interest, we do what we call flood the zone. We'll program a number of different events and pieces of content with a number of different experts across a number of different angles.
Before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs. Ahrefs provides you with an all-in-one SEO toolset that does everything from rank tracking to backlink analysis, keyword research, and technical audits. The best part, you can now use Ahrefs Webmaster Tools for free to identify and prioritize optimization opportunities for your website, see all the keywords that your web pages are ranking for, take a close look at the websites that link back to and refer you in their content, and analyze other websites to find out what drives their rankings. Visit ahrefs.com/AWT and sign up for free. And now, back to today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SaaS SEO Show. I'm your host, George Casiotis, and today I'm very happy and excited to be joined by Eric Jaffe. Eric is the Managing Director and Global Head of Content at GLG. He leads a team of content and production professionals who create thousands of monetized world-class virtual events and transcripts for clients every year. Before GLG, Eric worked as an Iraq policy advisor in the Office of the U.S. Secretary of Defense, where he was a Presidential Management Fellow. He holds an MA in International Relations and International Economics from the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies and a BA in Government from Cornell University. And I think this was one of the most unique, let's say, introductions we've ever done for this podcast. Eric, welcome.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it.
So as we do with every guest here at the show, I guess my question is, I want to learn about you and your background, but more specifically, how did that jump happen from working essentially for the US government, right? Or
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, to this world that you are in today?
Yeah, great question. It took a lot of hard work, to be honest. I was working and living in Washington, D.C., and for personal reasons, wanted to move to London. And so I started to investigate different pathways, both with the government, but also in the private sector. And long story short, the government path that was potentially going to be made available to me to stay somewhere within the, kind of U.S. defense apparatus, because they do have different opportunities in the UK. It was going to take a really long time. And after interviewing with a number of different private sector companies in political risk consulting, management consulting, and then GLG, a lot of the feedback I got, frankly, was, you seem smart, but we don't really know what you can do for us. But I was able to convey to GLG that when I worked at the Pentagon, my role on the Iraq policy desk, once President Obama had come into office, was to, as a relatively junior person, help manage the office's congressional portfolio. And so I was able to communicate that, I sort of thought of Congress and the committees that were relevant as my client, and that I was developing client service skills. And long story short, it worked. It actually, I think, did make sense in retrospect. That was a sort of soft skill that I had learned when I was at the Pentagon. It didn't stop my colleagues at GLG in London from thinking I, worked undercover for the CIA when I started it for probably about the first year. But eventually I convinced them I'm here, all day long working side by side with you. I am actually a real GLG employee. But yeah, it was tough. It was a lot of research, a lot of rejection. And for anyone who's trying to change careers, I know how humbling that is and how hard it is. But so much growth came out of it, and I have no regrets. I'm so grateful for having made that switch.
Can you speak about your role today and also about what GLG is and what the main services are, who you serve and who gets the most value and so on?
For sure. So I'll back up and start with what GLG is. So people may or may not know that GLG is the world's leading platform for insight. We started this industry about 25 years ago. Actually, this is our 25th anniversary this year, which we're celebrating. And the company started by our two founders, Mark Gerson and Thomas Lerman, essentially trying to start a publishing company. And they got doctors to write research reports for healthcare investors. And the feedback they got from those investors when they were, getting them to write these reports was, I don't have time to read this, 500-page document. Can you just put me in touch with the person who wrote it? And that was what birthed this idea of connecting, people who need to learn, professionals who need to learn with experts. And they built out this network, which now stands at over 1 million in size. So we have over 1 million experts in our, all over the world in our network, and we have thousands of clients. And what GLG does is, you could think about us as like an Uber for expertise. We connect professionals who need to learn with, we aspire to connect them with the perfect expert out there in the world to address whatever it is that they need to learn. And of course, in our increasingly complex and interconnected world, more and more professionals need to learn, and they need to learn quickly. And so we're really good at going out and finding the exact right subject matter expert very quickly and connecting them to someone who needs to learn. So that is the core of GLG's business. Sometimes it's referred to as the expert network business. And we service that globally across our 24 offices, primarily by our clients coming to us and saying, "Hey, I want to learn about specialty chemicals distribution, or the impact of Silicon Valley Bank and what happened there." Our content, I'm our global head of content. Our content business is, I have a team of over 100 professionals all over the world, in Asia, Europe, India, and North America. And they are creating content all day and pushing that to our clients. The content comes in primarily two forms. One, live events. So I have content moderators who are steeped in the areas in which they cover, might be public equity investor, telecom team, it might be a healthcare team. And they will host an expert, oftentimes on Zoom, and invite clients to come attend. And we typically cap attendance for many of our best events. And we host literally hundreds of those events every month. And we are constantly inviting our clients on different distribution lists and pushing alerts to them, letting them know, "Hey, we're about to host this event. We know that this topic is of interest to you. Why don't you come?" We also, the second type of content that we create are transcripts. And this is an increasingly prevalent form of learning for professionals. A lot of our clients who are investors, they want to read transcripts before they conduct one-to-one interviews. Because if you think about it, if you're trying to get up to speed on a topic, a one-to-one phone call may not be the most efficient or effective way of doing that, because you yourself as the learner may not know what questions to ask. So if you can read a transcript about a company or about a sector or about a trend, get smart, that will allow you to conduct that one-to-one call with an expert much more effectively. And so we create hundreds of transcripts. We create about 350 transcripts per month that populate in GLG's content library, which is sort of like a Netflix for learning that we are that we have, and that we are investing a lot of resources to build out. So that is primarily my role as global head of content, to oversee this team, to oversee our editorial standards, career framework, editorial quality, the library as a repository for it, and also importantly, to make sure that we are pushing that content, those transcripts, those events, out to our clients and prospective clients, as effectively as we possibly can.
That's one of the things that, like, unless you heard about it, or you were involved in a discussion and you somehow encountered it in some form or another, I wouldn't expect that there is such a thing, right? Like a network, and that it's, as I hear it, at least, it's heavily based on content, and but in a very unique way, right? This is not something that you get to hear every day, and it's very impressive. But I would like to dig a deeper here. Can we share just a couple of use cases? Let's say that we are talking about a tech company, right? Regardless of whether it's a SaaS company, software, or hard tech, or whatever, can we share a use case of this company needs GLG for that reason? This is the use case here.
Yeah, for sure. So, the content that my team creates is primarily geared toward investor clients, but GLG's core business absolutely serves corporate clients. That is what our actually fastest growing part of our business. And there's a number of different use cases for the core GLG service. So, for example, if a corporation is considering building out a new product, they may want to go and interview prospective buyers of that product, decision makers. They can actually use GLG to conduct a survey. So they could have GLG arrange a panel of a dozen different buyers or prospective buyers and get their feedback across a number of different products or potential products to see product market fit, help craft their go-to-market, et cetera. Another use case is in the case of regulatory or breaking news that may affect, an investment or a company's holdings. It's Silicon Valley Bank being a prime example of that. When that Friday, I believe it was in March, when it was announced that there was major problems with Silicon Valley Bank. I believe it was at 3:00 Eastern that afternoon. We had a former expert from the FDIC speak to the potential implications of Silicon Valley Bank closing and what that might mean, what that might look at. We're very careful at GLG. We have a world-class compliance framework. We built the industry's compliance framework. So we are careful not to work, for example, with current government officials. We have a very robust compliance process for all of the content we generate, for all of the one interactions that we facilitate. And our clients love us for that reason. But we are really good at, within that compliance framework, getting the person who has the best expertise in the world to speak to our clients. So as I mentioned, could be researching a new product and a go-to-market. It could be breaking news and trying to not just consume the news, but contextualize the news. One of the biggest use cases for content at GLG is, we think FT, New York Times, Bloomberg, whatever your preferred news source is, it's really good at breaking news and telling you what happened. But what we often find is our clients lack the context. What does it mean? Yes, we know that Silicon Valley Bank may close. What does that mean? What could that look like? How will that what will the second and third order effects of that be? That's information that is very, you can't Google that. You can't really find that out online. You have to speak to an expert who has firsthand knowledge, who's lived it before. And that's where GLG content and our core value proposition can really come in handy.
I know, but the word that comes to my mind as I hear you speak is community. Would you say that there is a community or an element of community in what you've built?
Absolutely. That is the goal. GLG has a global business, and we are the original. We created the industry, and we remain the largest player in the industry. But we really try to serve our users and our clients locally, which is why we have offices set up all over the world. And my team knows, specifically, the person who covers ed tech on my public equities team knows who the top, 500 users are in North America who focus on ed tech. And those users will come to this person's events time and time again. Healthcare is the same way. Healthcare investors all know each other. They go to the same conferences. They go to ASCO. They go to AAS. And our team knows them and has really built out a nice community of them. And for our most premium clients, our team will make sure that they are aware of breaking news and say, hey, we just saw this happen. I think a meeting with, a certain expert, this would be really timely and impactful. And that's part of what our clients love about us, is that we can anticipate their demands and proactively push to them the things that are most relevant.
You mentioned having presence in, correct me if I'm wrong, 25 countries. Does that mean that you have team members in some of these countries or all of these countries? I don't know. Does that mean that some of your content is not in English, like you have content in other languages?
Yeah, that's correct. So I believe I should have checked right before this, but I think it's 25 global offices. I'm not sure the number of countries because, for example, we have, I believe, 6 offices in North America today, maybe 5 or 6. But yes, we have content that is in Mandarin. We have content that is in a variety of different languages on the continent in Europe. And that is a growth area of our business. We serve thousands of clients across Europe, the Middle East, and APAC.
So one of the two main core content formats is these virtual events in the form of, as I perceive it, correct me if I'm wrong, like sort of webinars or one-on-ones, like interviews, right? My question would be, with all this like experience conducting interviews that feed your content creation engine, do you have any like tips on how to conduct an effective interview in the context of extracting valuable insights?
I do. I think GLG works because it's very specific. Our clients come to us, yes, for macro level, communication. Yet we have an incredible array of former heads of state, ambassadors, economists, Nobel Prize winners. But the majority of what our clients come to us for is very specific information. So if you look at the list of events and content that are coming up at GLG, it's very, very specific. So for example, I'll just read off some of the topics that are literally today. Adler Pelzer high yield credit update. We're doing a remote roundtable on diabetes therapeutics and devices. We're doing another, what we call remote roundtable on testing, inspection in the certification industry. So these are very, very specific topics. And I think that that's what our clients find valuable, is the specificity of the focus, because they're focused on very, very narrow subjects and trying to gain expertise on them. I think when it comes to the actual mechanics of an individual interview, I think there's probably three things, as I reflect, because I've hosted probably at this point thousands of events, and I host GLG's podcast. The first is do your homework. It's important, I think, to do research, just as you did, and you're coming in with lots of questions about GLG that are informed by the research that you did. The second thing I think is, wherever possible, try to build some rapport. Particularly when you're interviewing somebody who's really senior, I think it's important to get that rapport a little bit early on and make sure that you can make them feel comfortable. And then the final sort of mechanical advice I would give is just, be present, listen attentively, and don't be overly scripted. So for example, like for you sent me a list of questions in advance, but we're just sort of organically having this conversation now. So I think those rules have worked really well. And I've tried to promote that mindset, I think, to our global team of content hosts.
My question is, what troubles me here is that when it comes to like text-based content, you can sort of maintain or check, like ensure quality. How do you do that for these virtual events that you have? And I mean, do you measure the effectiveness or satisfaction through surveys that you send afterwards, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have two primary ways that we keep tabs, if you will, and enforce quality. The first one is the number of attendees is a decent proxy for, are we programming on the right topic with the right expert at the right time, which is effectively what we're trying to do. So, up until the start of the event, if you've got like the right people there and the right number of people there, we're aiming for, roughly 6, 7, 8 attendees per event. Some of our events have 15, 20. Some of our uncapped events will have hundreds of people. So if you're getting the attendance, then that's great. On the more qualitative side, we have our team leaders who sit in. So I have team leaders who have deep, 15, 20 years of experience. My head of public equities, worked on the buy side for 20 years, worked across all investment strategies. Our team leaders will sit in on the events and fill out, a form and give the hosts feedback. So it's not necessarily every event that gets sat in on, but we try to have that regular feedback process that's internal. We have in the past, and we expect to in the future have a more systematic way of soliciting feedback from the users who've attended. And we will, I think, that will be most easy to implement as we get more and more users onto our library. So we want to have on our library, much like you would, almost on Amazon, rate something 5 stars. We'd like to be able to have our users rate our transcripts, according to stars, and even leave qualitative feedback, so that we can get a better sense for what our clients value, what they like, what they don't like, and then also potentially share that back to the users who are on the library.
We will discuss about transcripts, but I would like to discuss how you come up with these topics. Even though you kind of touched on that, like you mentioned the example of SVB and what happened there, is it solely based on like the demand that you have from clients, or is it that, you know what, we see here a trend that's emerging, AI content, generative AI, whatever this may be. I just bring this up as an example because it's happening right now, and most people in our industry are kind of aware of it. Or yeah, so I guess my question is, how do you come up with these topics? Is it solely based on, you know, the demand that you have from clients, or is it that you are proactive about it and you monitor trends closely, and you will do an event about something that you feel is important right now?
It's a mix. We definitely try to be relentlessly focused on our users. So if our users aren't going to come to something, we're not going to program it. However, so we are paying, as you said, we pay very close attention to what our clients are saying, what they're telling us, what they're interested in. We're very careful not to compromise any of our clients' investment hypotheses. And so we have training and processes in place to avoid doing that. But we, if there's a glut of clients, focus on a specific public equity, if an earnings call has gone in, a certain direction, we're going to program on that topic. And if there's a lot of interest, we do what we call flood the zone. We'll program a number of different events and pieces of content with a number of different experts across a number of different angles. Now, in addition to talking to our clients and paying attention to what they're focused on, of course, we're also reading the news. We're on Bloomberg terminals. We're looking at which way credit markets are moving. We're talking to private equity. So my team programs content across all different investment strategies, and they're reading the news and connecting the dots and trying to see what's of interest. But to your last point, we may not see a number of projects coming from our clients, for example, on how to effectively deploy AI across different industries. But we know that that's going to be interesting, particularly if we get an expert who's going to be interesting. So if we have the former head of AI from Amazon, that person is probably going to have something interesting to say to our clients. And so we will program across thematic areas of interest. Silicon Valley Bank and its potential impact across a variety of different sectors being another great example of that. And in the past, there have been topics like, the Euro crisis back in, the mid 2010s, the sovereign debt default of Puerto Rico, and Japan's, Abenomics proposal and how that impacted the yen are a few, particular topics that I remember being. There were weeks or perhaps even months of thematic programming that we did on that for clients all over the world.
It's a lot of content. I mean, from a management standpoint, like, can you speak about how do you manage all these like piece of content, events, transcripts, all these things that you do on a monthly basis?
I mean, the most important thing I do is I hire people a lot smarter than I am on my team to lead the team and to help. Because all of, I as you noted, my background is, on policy and regulatory matters. And I led our legal, economic, and regulatory affairs practice for 3.5 years. And that is still an area of deep interest and passion for me. But I hire really, really smart people with a lot of subject matter expertise and passion, who know a lot, who learn a lot about GLG, and then are therefore able to act as effectively editors in chief over their respective areas of content. Because at the global level, it wouldn't be realistic for me or any other person to have mastery over these number of topics. I mean, it's probably roughly equivalent to an executive editor at a big newspaper, or a head of research at a big investment fund or a big corporation. It was once described to me as like, a role like this is not, perhaps it's based on being like a university dean, where you have your discipline. Every dean is going to have a PhD, and most of them come, are well respected and accomplished within their discipline, and then you become a dean. But you continue to hone your discipline. So I still, as I mentioned, host events, particularly with our legal, economic, and regulatory affairs experts, host our podcast, et cetera.
Okay, that makes sense. I would like to go back to transcripts a bit and discuss what are the best practices that you can share with us when it comes to repurposing content from live events. And also, what's the contribution of technology in this process? Because I don't expect, of course, we'll hear from you, but I don't expect that you do this process manually, or at least it's assisted by technology. So yeah, any best practices that you can share or on content repurposing from a live event to a transcribed version, and what's the role of technology in that process?
Yeah. I think, like most things with technology, I would say the best practice is keep it simple. We try to have our transcription process work as simply as possible, particularly when you're creating content at the scale that we are. Every extra step creates complexity and the potential for things to get screwed up. So our process is, we have two types of events. We have those that are transcribed and those that are not. And our clients that know that some of our events are not transcribed, I think they value that because they know that they can ask questions. Those are for our what we call our remote roundtable product. It's our more premium product. They're capped in terms of attendance. And so we want clients to feel like they can ask questions and speak to the expert in such a way that they won't have their hypotheses captured and shared out with other clients. But for our events that are transcribed, keep it simple. We transcribe live the actual conversation. For events where the topic is particularly time sensitive, we do a compliance check. The host will do a compliance check to make sure there was nothing said that would even come close to running up against any of our compliance policies. And then we will post what we call a preliminary transcript or a first draft transcript, just because we know it's so important to get it out to the market. And then there will be a second turn that the host does to edit it and polish it up a bit more over the course of the next 24 to 36 hours. And that's it. Then it's on the library. At the scale that we're operating and the way that our clients use us, that process I think has worked really well. So yeah, that's basically how we operate. And but sorry, I should mention the other form of content is just the offline interviews. So we have I have a team that all they do all day is interview experts, not for live events, but they interview them offline. That conversation is transcribed, and we call those library exclusive transcripts, and they go directly into our library. And that produces a huge scale. That produce about 350 transcripts per month.
That's massive. I guess for someone though, for the information to be accessible to your clients, like this is powered by technology, right? I mean, for me to search for something, I'm assuming that there is some sort of search engine or search capabilities so that I can access the piece of information that I'm looking for.
That's correct. We have we call it the GLG Library. And in the library, you can see all of our content that has been created. And you can also see the upcoming events. And we've invested a lot of resources in building out the library. We actually have what we're calling an alpha version of it that we just released last month, which we're ramping up now and delivering to all of our users. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback on it. And in that tool, you can search for content, you can do some discovery. And over time, we're going to build in the ability for the tool for you to be able to save alerts, much like you would on Zillow, for example. Hey, I'm interested in tech. I'm interested in energy and industrials. These are the regions. These are the specific narrow areas of interest. Please have the tool push me updates whenever anything goes into the library so I can stay aware. Our clients really, really want that. And then we're also going to build out, much like you would see, for example, on a Netflix or a Hulu, we're experimenting right now with like carousels. So when you log on as a user, you would see a bespoke carousel. left to right, and see the content that is most interesting and relevant to you. We know that Netflix generates about 80% of its usage from recommendations. So we've also invested in a pretty sophisticated recommendation engine that we're going to pipe into that library. And we hope to have what we're calling Library 2.0 out later this summer. And then importantly, we also have started a partnership with Bloomberg. So you can actually now get GLG transcripts on the Bloomberg terminal. And we have done a soft launch of that, and we're going to announce the formal Bloomberg partnership along with Library 2.0 later this summer.
That's all very interesting. Are there differences when it comes to the content creation process across different industries? For example, pharma vs, I don't know, tech or something like that, due to like regulations or like legal differences that may apply in one case?
Yeah, the sunshine laws do constrain healthcare, but I would say that's true both of the core one-to-one interactions that Insight networks may facilitate, as well as the content we generate. I think the big changes, if you will, or differences there are other competitors out there to GLG that have different styles of content creation. We love ours. We feel strongly that we have chosen the right one. We have a team of unbiased content moderators that interview the experts, and we get those transcripts out to our clients as quickly as we possibly can. Some of our competitors have embargo periods, for example. But we feel, and we know from our clients, how important it is to get that content, moderated again in an unbiased way by someone who's been in the field for a while, and getting it out as quickly to the market as we possibly can.
Okay. Can I ask you, how do you see the rise of generative AI and more specifically generative content affect and impact both positively and negatively what you do?
I think it's a big deal. And I think that it is mostly going to be positive. Let's say there's two different paths. There's the near-term impact of what something like a ChatGPT can offer. So if you think about the transcripts that we have, it's actually quite time-consuming to summarize a transcript. And these are long interviews, 45 minutes, an hour. They're very valuable. They're very rich in insight. But for either the content creator, the host, the GLG person, or the expert to then summarize the key points of a transcript is labor intensive. And I have done some work with ChatGPT. It's quite good at doing summaries. It's actually, it's a little scary how good it is. I don't really understand how it does that. That's obviously the magic of AI. So right out of the gate, there are going to be use cases, I think, for our industry to deploy AI to add value to our users in a way that I think will be additive and incremental in nature. In the more medium term, I think that AI is going to be an enabler for GLGers. So if you think about its ability for a core GLG direct client service professional, AI is going to make their search for experts through our millions of experts, or over 1 million experts, just going to make it better, right? It's going to deliver to that GLG client solutions professional based on what the client is interested in. A very, I think, accurate list of experts who could be a good fit. In the more long term, where I see the industry is going is, if you think about the transcripts that we have. That's a really valuable asset. There's a lot of information in those transcripts that's very valuable. And where I could see this going is if that corpus, if you will, of transcripts could be used with a ChatGPT like overlay. You could imagine a professional going into the GLG GPT, asking it a question. Who are the big buyers of Crest toothpaste, and having the GLG GPT deliver very smart results, and then embedded in those results could be links to potential experts, potential transcripts, And so it could almost be like a constellation of options of different GLG products that could allow the user to learn. And this would sort of guide their learning journey. So whereas now, the GLG interface is human, and I think it would be in the future. This kind of interface, I think, will just add a lot more value for our users as they're going through their daily learning process.
Is auditing your content, because as we discussed, like you roll out a few hundreds of content pieces, like in different formats every month. And I'm assuming that at this point, there must be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of pieces of content in your library. So is there a time where you will, for example, delete a piece of content because it's outdated? And how can you do that at such a massive scale, right? We're not just talking about auditing a couple of hundreds of pieces of content. We are talking about thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. So I guess my question is, how do you ensure that your inventory and your library, or however you call it, is accurate and up to date? And whether there is a time that you say that, you know what, we need to remove this because it doesn't apply anymore? It's
a great question. Some of our clients, particularly credit investors, do like to go back and see, some of these companies have been distressed for many years. And so they will like to go back and see transcripts from years ago to better understand the history of a distressed credit. But you're right. I think for most other professionals, learning, how valuable is it to better understand the potential impact of COVID on industry back in 2021 or, late 2020? It might not be that valuable. That said, the library allows you to search by date. So you can sort of constrain the date however you want. We haven't thought too much about how to pull out content from the library, nor have we gotten a lot of feedback from users that they're, overcome by search results that are not relevant. Perhaps that might be something we need to revisit in the future. But at the moment, the most important thing is we're adding, over 500, 600, 700 pieces of content per month. And as long as we're getting that new content into the library and into the hands of our users every month, I think we're okay. Yeah, that makes sense. This was all very insightful. I mean, this was a different conversation because it kind of opened a window to a completely different world that I personally ignored. I didn't know that, this is a thing. And I think that this is what makes it so interesting. So thank you very much for this, Eric. And last question I have for you, where can people find out more about you and GLG and get in touch if they'd like to? Yeah, anyone email me. My email is ejaffe, EJAFFE @glgroup.com. GLG's website certainly has a lot of information about GLG. You can listen to Deciding Factors, my podcast, GLG's podcast, on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. My last one, actually, that we just released, I think about a week and a half ago, was with Barney Frank, the author of Dodd-Frank, the famous congressman who we talked with about Silicon Valley Bank. I'm reasonably active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. And then, George, to your last comment, first of all, it was great speaking with you. Thank you for having me on. People who don't know about GLG, it's not the most commonly known industry, but for people who know the industry, they're using it every day. And so one of the things that we're trying to do, GLG's been around for 25 years. We are trying to get, more awareness of GLG and the industry and promote it because but I do think that this is a big idea. Professionals of all stripes need to learn, and GLG, I think, is the best way to learn. And so we're looking forward to bringing awareness to as many people as possible. That's right. I agree. Well, thank you very much, Eric. Thank you very much for doing this. Awesome. Thanks, George. It was a lot of fun.
Before you go, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs. Ahrefs provides you with an all-in-one SEO toolset that does everything from rank tracking to backlink analysis, keyword research, and technical audits. The best part, You can now use Ahrefs Webmaster Tools for free to identify and prioritize optimization opportunities for your website, see all the keywords that your web pages are ranking for, take a close look at the websites that link back to and refer you in their content, and analyze other websites to find out what drives their rankings. Visit ahrefs.com/AWT and sign up for free.